Hey guys, welcome back to the Kathryn and Derrick show. Today we'll be interviewing
Kathryn
and
Rebecca.
They do.
I am the Community Outreach Director for Preservation Greensboro.
And I'm an urban guide for Preservation Greensboro.
Can y'all explain y'all jobs?
So my job for Preservation Greensboro is to raise funds. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that gets no federal state funding. So I have to apply for grants, put on parties to raise money, just do overall advertising, reaching out to the community, and making sure that we have a good withstanding relationship with the community.
And what I do is I take people around to historic neighborhoods in Greensboro, teach them a little bit about the history that's there, show them some cool architectural features, and get them to know their city in a whole new historic way.
What inspired you to do what you do?
So I'm a historian by trade, and I'm a big nerd for history, and I love my hometown of Greensboro because I think there's a lot of cool things that hide in there. So I contacted Preservation Greensboro and said, hey, I love doing interpretation, and I would love to see what it's like to tell the stories of all these buildings. And they said, why don't you join us?
I went to college, got a degree, and then had to sit down with my mom one night and just figure out what it was I wanted to do with my life. So I went back to school for historic preservation. I grew up in a historic house. I went to a historic college. So history and architecture have always kind of been a part of me. It's my favorite thing to see when I go to new cities. So when I needed an internship, I reached out to Preservation Greensboro, and they needed an intern. And so I interned, and we had great fun. I really enjoyed everything that they did. They're great people. And so when it came time for me to graduate, I was lucky enough to get a job in Greensboro with Double Hung, who restores historic windows. And then PGI reached out to me to see if I was available to fill the position.
What do you guys do here, like in this building?
Well, this building is the Cascade Saloon, actually known, well, is now the Chrisman building. Chrisman is a construction company, primarily from Michigan, but they do have now in this building is their new headquarters for Greensboro. Out of this building, they have architects, they have marketing, their executives every once in a while come here for a little retreat. April that you met earlier, she is amazing, and she is, I believe, head of construction. I'm not sure what her position is, but they saved this building in conjunction with PGI. The building was sitting empty, well, not empty, full of stuff. They had trucks, cars, vending machines, motorcycles. I think they found like 3 or 4 motorcycles in the building. And with the help of PGI, Chrisman bought the building and restored it. And so we're sitting in the restored version of the Cascade Saloon.
Do you guys have any goals for this building?
Well, I would think talking more about the African American history that's here. So it's pretty cool that what was in the early 1900s, it was really rare due to Jim Crow laws for there to be a black-owned business. So I think it'd be great to bring a lot more attention to that and then start talking more about black-owned businesses throughout Greensboro and save those locations. So.
As also on top of that, the preservation of a building is very big for us. If you guys ever remember seeing this a couple years ago, there was no ceiling to it whatsoever. They had to come up with a new way to rig the walls and stabilize the walls, because when the trains come by, it vibrates everything, every little bit. So just the engineering that went into saving the building is amazing, and for us as at Preservation Greensboro, that is our goal, to save more buildings for their history content, for their amazing structures, how they're built and put together. The fact that it was able to last so long without its major structure point, like the roof, is just an amazing feat and something that I feel like we need to preserve for future generations.
What kind of education did you have to get for your job?
So I have a bachelor's in communication. So that helps with the advertising that I do and the talking to people and being really nice and friendly. And then I went and got my associate's in historic preservation. That was probably the funnest degree because it was hands-on. So I was actually repairing the mortar on a brick wall, or I was putting on a slate roof on a building. That was absolutely phenomenal. So that got me into the actual historic preservation part.
Oh, and I did my undergraduate at UNCG in history and anthropology. So it was neat to get the perspective of studying history, but also studying cultures. And then I went and got my master's degree at NC State in public history. And some people are like, well, what's public history? And it's basically doing historic tours at historic sites, not just sitting in a classroom, but really getting out there and discovering what's around you. And I'm thinking about going back to school for a certificate in historic preservation. So I've got a lot of school under my belt.
When you guys were like little, did you originally want to do this?
When I was little, I used to look at National Geographic magazines, and I had no idea what an anthropologist was. I just thought, oh, it would be cool to go around the world and see different cultures before they disappear and try and document them. And a little bit later, I always knew I loved history because I like to read books and write essays about history like a total little nerd. And it's what I was always good at in school, so I saw myself doing something. It wasn't until college that I thought about working in a museum, and then just last year doing preservation work. So it kind of just changed over time.
How would you say how hard is your job?
Because I am a very bubbly and energetic person, I think my job to me is somewhat easy because I believe in the mission and what Preservation Greensboro does. I find it hard every once in a while, but it just fits me, so I feel like it's easy. I mean, there's hard aspects to it. Fundraising is never easy because the part of fundraising is getting your mission across and hoping somebody else believes in your mission, and that doesn't always happen.
Convincing them to give us money.
Yeah.
Convincing them that we're worth it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. For me, I would say it can be difficult when you don't know where like the historic sources are. Sometimes I only have a week to get ready for a tour, so I'm trying to cram in as much as I know about a house and learn all about this stuff. So it can be kind of tough, but it's exciting because you're always exploring new mysteries, and that's what I like about history. There's always something to uncover. You just got to find it. And doing history in the 20th century is way easier than Revolutionary War history, which is my other job, because with that you have some very poorly hard to read letters from the 1700s that you can barely read, but in this time period it's just newspapers and lots of information, so it's always amazing to me how easy it is to find data, and that's pretty cool. So
Do you have anyone you look up to, like that's in the same thing you want to do?
I have a lot of great bosses in my field, because what's really cool about them is they believe in younger people carrying on the work. So our boss Benjamin is really supportive of us, and he knows that we want to be in this field. He knows that we have a lot of drive for it. In my other jobs I have great bosses too, but anybody, I would look up to anybody who's a real go-getter and believes in helping the next generation out, which is you guys. So
How long has Preservation Greensboro been around?
So officially since 1966. In the early 60s, Blandwood Mansion, which is where Preservation Greensboro offices are, and we own it and operate it as a house museum, it was deteriorating substantially. And so a few of the ladies in the area realized that it is a landmark and it needs to be saved, and they purchased it. They were able to raise enough money to purchase it and save the house. And that's how we got started.
What do you like most about your job?
I like getting people engaged. I like seeing their eyes kind of light up. I like them making connections to what they've seen all their lives. I mean, that's what's happened to me. I've lived in Greensboro my whole life. I'm 30 years old, and just doing tours downtown, you know, I looked up, but I didn't look that closely. So finding like all those little details architecturally or just socially, learning how women owned businesses, you know, in the early 1800s, and then helping people make that connection, it makes them appreciate their city more. So
for me, the preservation is about the craftsmanship that went into these buildings way back when. And so the fun part of my job is to be able to talk about that. And when I find somebody else who actually understands the craftsmanship too, we geek out. Like, we could geek out for hours about just how to make bricks. It's ridiculous and so much fun. To me, it's really cool because in my position, I'm starting to meet the younger generations that actually are interested in it. And with Greensboro, I think there is a larger generation here than in some cities that actually care about historic buildings.
Would you ever want to expand, like make it Preservation North Carolina, or make it Preservation like United States?
So they already exist. Yeah, so Preservation Greensboro is one of, I want to say, 10-ish, 13-ish
well, maybe we should say how
in
it
the
works.
city, or in the state. So any town that is historic, or well, most towns are historic, that want to do more in preservation, really it's starting and figure out your funding and getting together and doing things. A lot of cities start with this really cool thing called heart bombing. Well, they'll make paper hearts and they'll cover a building with all these hearts to say this building is important and we want to save it. And that's a good way to start bringing awareness in. It's all about bringing awareness. In the state of North Carolina, we have Preservation Greensboro, Preservation Durham, Preservation Wilmington, Preservation Edenton. North Carolina has a very large concentration actually of preservation, which is very lucky. And so we're all the individual immediate preservation groups within the cities, but above us is Preservation North Carolina, and they are the ones that we go to help. When we, for instance, there was a building in my tiny little town that I was trying to find out history about, and I couldn't find anything out. I placed an ad in the newspaper, and then it dawned on me that there is a regional office specifically there to help me with history. I was able to contact them. Unfortunately, they didn't have anything, but they were able to lead me into other places. I was able to go to the North Carolina archives from there, find a few things there. They helped me find an article about a brick mason who could possibly have been the one to build the building. So that is statewide. Not all states have it, I believe, but North Carolina's is incredibly active. And then above that, we have the National Trust, which is the National Historic Trust, National Historic Preservation Trust, sorry. And they help any state that needs help. They do grants, they do conferences, they do classes. Really, there is an amazing amount of people who actually do preservation. You just don't know it.
Yeah. So we're not alone in it, which is pretty cool. Because if we were alone in it, then we wouldn't have funding. Like I said, so even though, for example, we don't get state or federal funding, we still have avenues to apply for grants and that kind of thing. And we have support from people who know how to do preservation. They know state laws, they know national laws. So if we're ever stuck on something, we have that support to do so, which is good, because if we were here on our own, it would be a lot harder to save these buildings, because people would just be like, there's no legislation, let's just bulldoze this place, we don't care about the past. So it takes a big network of people to make it successful.
How long have you guys been doing this?
I've been with Preservation Greensboro since last September, so only a few months.
I started with Preservation Greensboro in October, but I started my degree in 2016. So I've been doing it for a little over 2 years.
And I've had my degree from UNCG for, I got it in 2012, so I can't do math on the spot. But I've been in the museum field for a long time, so this goes right along with that practice.
Has there ever been a building you've not been able to save?
I'm trying to think. In Greensboro, none come to mind simply because I'm not well versed in everything that.
We're worried about the building next door.
Yes, we are hopefully trying to work on the building next door. It's got some of the similar constraints that this building does because of the railroad system. There is also a house on MLK that we're working to hopefully save. There is the Christian Advocate building that way. I can't quite remember the address, that everybody wants to demolish and put up a parking lot. So hopefully that won't happen.
What was the most interesting building that you have saved?
Oh gosh. Here in Greensboro? I'm trying to think. There's so many cool ones.
That's what I was trying.
I mean, I haven't seen the inside of this building yet, so this is pretty cool, especially knowing that there was no roof, and that's amazing that it stood up. Gosh, I'm trying to think about houses. I like houses that are called Tudor style, and it just has like this cool triangular roof, so it's kind of like a dollhouse. But there's this house that's abandoned, kind of on Mendenhall, that it's a mixture of Tudor and Mediterranean. It's just really weird hodgepodge, and if I could win the lottery, that house would be mine, and I would restore it back to its historic settings. But there's just lots of really cool houses around Greensboro. I mean, I grew up in like a house that was built in the 80s, you know, so it's not anything special. So to see all these historic houses would be, you know, they're pretty inspiring. I like all the buildings downtown too. I like the neat storefronts. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're very lucky that we have that.
Can you think of one? It's like, it's hard to choose.
The only
you
one
know?
that comes to mind other than this building is Hillside, because I was in it today.
Yeah.
And when I did my internship, the summer of 2017, when it was on the tour of homes, I actually did some of my internship in Hillside. So I actually, okay, so Hillside is a house in Fisher Park. It was built
like
by, it is a mansion.
Yeah.
It was built for Julian Price, so the big Jefferson Financial Building, the president and owner. It was his home. It was built in, finished in either 1928 or 1929. It's a Tudor style. Has an amazing roof structure. I can never pronounce it. Luigi. Luigi tile from Italy, and it's, I think, in the process of restoring it to where it is now. It still needs work, but that roof structure alone barely needed any work whatsoever. I can remember that. And then there was some water damage, but the walls themselves are about 18 inches thick of brick with ceramic in between. And so because of that, it is strong. It is not going anywhere. We were talking about that today. It's going to be here for like another 200 years because the structure was built to last. Uh-oh.
You know what amazes me about the buildings downtown? So I always thought that all the kind of grayish colored buildings were granite, but it's actually terracotta. So I want you to think about a flower pot. Have you ever broken one before? You know how easy it is to chip? That's what the buildings are made out of, and they've lasted this many hundreds of years.
Yeah, that's
or almost hundreds.
The Jefferson building is made out of terracotta.
I mean, most of them are like terracotta front, and I was like, how is it that something that you make a flower pot out of can be strong enough?
Yeah.
But there's lots of options for making it different colors, so it's pretty cool. So.
How can people get involved in preservation?
Well, multiple ways. The first thing that comes to mind is we do walking tours every Wednesday, starting in April till we haven't quite figured out the end of it. But every Wednesday at
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Yep, walking
This
tours.
lovely lady will be walking groups of, I think the largest group you had was like 40 last year.
Probably 40, but it can get up to 100 because
Yeah.
luckily I have a headset where you can hear me.
Yeah.
So
And so those are every single Wednesday. Those are free. Come join. Our website is amazing. It has all of our events on our website if you want to check it out. We also have the thing I'm currently working on is our big tour of homes coming up in May, where we open up 6 houses and you can tour them. You can purchase your ticket online. We also will take volunteers. Really, just call us if you got an idea to do something. We'll talk about it. We're very open. At least I'm trying to be very open and get preservation out there. That is my goal. So you can get involved by just calling us. You can come to Blandwood. We do tours Tuesday through Sunday. I'm trying to think what else.
well, let me ask you. So, if you think about buildings, have you ever seen one that was cool to you? Yeah. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to be an advocate? Like, what does it mean to you guys to advocate for something? Like, you have a shirt that you're advocating, right?
Like,
What's something you guys really care about?
Like in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
oh, like if I wear like a 76er shirt, is that like
Sure.
Yeah. That could be advocating.
video games? Like,
You like video games?
If you had a Rocky and Derrick show t-shirt.
Yeah.
So you guys have YouTube, which is awesome. So you're
Mhm.
already helping us advocate for this. So think about like what you do with social media. You know, if you like something, you're going to share information about it, and that's how you get information. So if you want to advocate for something, let people know about it, say why it's special. I would start with doing cool pictures of it. Show somebody why this is totally different than what they've seen before. Then I would invite them to come to the building, maybe do that heart bombing because that's fun. Everybody loves hearts. Maybe go to class, like ask your teacher, hey, instead of doing the same old, let's go visit this building. Let's draw up a concept of it. Let's try to figure out why it matters. Because the more and more you can ask people questions, the more you can kind of like figure it out. So I would ask you, like, why does it matter for us to save a building next to a railroad? Can you guess, like, what this building used to be? Yeah. No, that's okay. So, like, think about it. So we're next to a railroad, and this used to be a restaurant. So you could talk about, like, well, people needed to stop on their train rides to get a place to eat. So when you find out that there's some really cool African American history here, you know, that might interest you to explore more about business owning during that time period, something that was rare. So you just start asking people questions and you try to get them to think, why does it matter? So that's how you get people in preservation, because you've got to want to care about this. So if you see a place that's cool, I want you to know why you think it's cool.
how can people get in contact with you?
Well, they can call our office. Our office phone number is 336-272-5003, or they can email me. I love email. So my email address is KMCDOWELL, so K McDowell, my last name, at preservationgreensboro.org. We also have a website, which is just preservationgreensboro.org.
Do you have any advice for kids who want to preserve buildings?
Yeah, definitely. I would say start with talking to your teacher and maybe join like a history club to start out. And then see if you can bring that club or your classroom, see if we can come to your classroom, talk to you about preservation, or maybe you guys can come to Blandwood. But I love visiting classrooms. I do it with my other job as a museum educator, and we would just come up with some cool dialogue about what it's like to be in this field and what it's like to go to school for this kind of thing. You know, college, going to college changes nowadays, so you guys would want to maybe get some hands-on experience, maybe come to a field school and see what it's like to actually do preservation techniques. So we could set up some kind of cool school where you guys could try it out, or we show you like a history of a building and we teach you about how to do a tour and you come on a tour with us.
Yeah.
So maybe make you guys be the tour guides for your classmates. So
just never stop asking questions. Any adult I'm sure will gladly help you. Parents, teachers, aunts, uncles. For me, it really was reading. I like to read. So pulling off books and I'm trying to think what else. It's digital age. I found my school because I Googled. Google's there. There's some wrong things with Google. But there is an amazing amount of people in this field, the field schools. There's all sorts of field schools, and not just in the United States. There's some in, I got an ad for one in New Zealand. There's Scotland. There's England. Scotland and England are the main, or in Ireland are the main ones I see all the time.
Yeah, and it's a cool way for you to go experience another culture too. So you experience a new culture, get a new perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learn some cool stuff about yourself.
Yeah, just always search.
Thanks for watching another interview with the Rocky and Derrick Show. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you would like to be on the Rocky and Derrick Show, click the link in the description below. Bye.
Bye.